Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening here in early June, and I'm joined, as I often am, by Scott Coleman. Scott, there were some highs, there were some lows, and in the end, it was a split in the quick two-game series against Boston.
Hey, Brad, I hope you were doing well. A tough game to go out on Wednesday afternoon. It would have been nice to pull off that mini sweep in Boston, but they were able to split the series, which isn't terrible against a pretty solid Boston club. And now we'll look ahead a little bit later to 4 games in Washington, which feels like a series the Braves really need to take advantage of.
We agree on that. And, just broadly, we will dig in, especially to the game on Wednesday, as that is the game that's not been covered on this podcast feed. But I do want to, at the top of the show, go ahead and tell everybody that we are part of the Foul Territory network of podcasts. And hopefully you are finding us on purpose. But if not, if you're still into us, thanks for being here. We cover the Atlanta Braves in comprehensive fashion, and we appreciate you listening to the show. Please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Overcast, etc. And we will be here multiple times each week talking about the Braves. It's an interesting kind of mini sweep, and sometimes people don't like when I do this, but if you were to zoom out 2 days ago and just go by the projections or the numbers or just the sheer logic of baseball and the way things are done, the most likely outcome in a 2-game series on the road against a decent opponent, not a great one, but a decent one, like you said, is a split. And yes, you would have preferred a mini sweep. And I do think that it would have been a little bit more likely to sweep than it would have been to be swept, given the quality of these two rosters. But that won't satisfy anybody. We all understand that, Scott. I do think we should at least talk about the game briefly on Tuesday, while also plugging that we did a show. And by we, I mean not necessarily Scott and I. It was actually Stephen Tolbert and Sean Coleman did a show yesterday on the feed talking about this game a little bit. But the game on Tuesday was a lot more fun. So we should at least talk about that for a second. I'm not sure how much you caught of it, but it was essentially the full Max Fried experience. So I like to start with some positivity before we delve into some more negative topics about today.
Well, you don't want to talk about Wednesday's performance at the plate.
Oh, it's gonna happen. We're just not quite yet.
Yeah, we're not looking forward to it. It was pretty bad. Max Fried, I don't know what else you can say about him right now. We of course know he got off to the just very weird start to the season. Didn't get out of the first inning in on the second game of the year, and then struggled in his second start. But since then, he has been nearly perfect, as good as quite literally anybody. He's working deep into games, 13 strikeouts on Tuesday night, which was a career high. I don't know how you feel, Brad. I've always felt like Max could probably chase strikeouts a little bit more and really just go for the swing and miss. But instead, he opts to get soft contact on the ground, which he does such a good job of. And of course, work deeper into games because sure, you can strike out a lot of hitters, but sometimes that requires 6, 7, 8 pitches at a time. And before you know it, you look up, it's the 5th inning and you're already at 95 pitches. Really just cannot say enough good stuff about Max Fried. He has been so damn good. And for a player who has bet on himself and is seemingly going to free agency in a couple of months, just feels like every 5th day when Max goes out there, he just adds a few more dollars onto that check because he has been just so damn good early on here in the season.
I know he allowed 3 runs, including 2 earned runs on Tuesday, but that's not quite indicative of how good he was. Speaking of the strikeouts, actually including even the game on Tuesday, he has this sky-high ground ball rate. He's actually 98th percentile in ground ball rate this year, which is obviously fantastic. You love ground balls, and I believe he's had double-digit ground balls in almost every start this year. And then he only had 4 ground balls on Tuesday because he was striking guys out instead. So you'll obviously trade those 2 things. What you don't want is the better contact, but you'll obviously do a little bit of a swap there. But you mentioned the slow start. He had a 7.71 ERA in his first 4 starts. The majority of that was the first 2 starts being a little bit spotty, we'll say. And then he was not great in his 4th start. And ever since, we're talking about 8 starts, an ERA of 1.57, averaging more than 7 innings per outing. And in the modern landscape of baseball, that does not happen. Guys don't average 7+ innings. And he's been doing that for, a month plus now. 55 strikeouts, 13 walks, and opponents have a sparkling 427 OPS. Yes, 427 OPS, Scott, against Max Fried in those 8 games. And look, we all know how good he is when he's got it going. He's missing bats. He's also inducing soft contact. The changeup has been really awesome. Obviously, Max gets talked about for his curveball a lot, but it's the whole offering, and really the changeup has basically been his best pitch so far this year. While you were gone, I don't know if you caught this, but did you happen to listen to the Buster Olney little mini segment about Max Fried, where he kind of got people mad about
Oh
Max
yeah.
Fried?
I
So
did hear it, and sadly, I think Buster is probably speaking the truth and fact, but you never know.
we didn't want to, make it a big thing. He was more candid than we thought he was going to be, I would say, in that answer. If you missed it, Buster, of course, of ESPN joined the show. Sean talked to him, I don't know, probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now at this point, and essentially asked about Max's future. And Buster was like, he's not going to be there anymore. And it was pretty uh, cut and dry, I would say. Now, I wouldn't maybe be as far as that, but obviously Buster is paid to be an insider. And I saw that you made a comment about Max's future. If people got mad at you by proxy, but I was kind of just you passing along what's already kind of been out there. But no matter what, I think what you said and what others have said about just kind of enjoying the Max Fried experience is a good idea right now. And I did get a stray question. I'm not sure if you ever get this, but somebody asked if the Braves quote unquote keep struggling, which is again probably overstated because the Braves are still pretty good right now. Whether they would look to maybe trade Max in the late summer. The answer to that is no. I just want to say that
No,
out loud.
no. This, I think we've seen as evidence of 2021 when nobody would have blamed Alex Anthopoulos for selling at the deadline with the injuries to Acuna and a few others. And he, of course, went out and bought and redid the outfield and added a couple of arms. And then the Braves won the World Series. So, no, Max will not be getting traded. I'm sad that I feel like I'm trying to take in his starts every fifth day. Not that we have to do a full post-mortem on Max in Atlanta, because who knows? Maybe. I mean, doesn't seem likely at this point, but he has just truly developed and emerged as the complete starting pitcher. He gets strikeouts. He doesn't walk people. He keeps the ball on the ground, doesn't give up a lot of hard contact or home runs. I mean, he is kind of a perfect pitcher in many ways, and he's been very good. And really, I said this on the show a couple of days ago, but it is just such a bummer that there has been this bad rotation of number 5 starters since Spencer Strider got hurt, because 1 through 4 with Fried, Sale, Lopez, and Morton, it's been very, very good. But sadly, that 5th starter spot has been a thorn in the Braves' side ever since Strider went down, and that was the case once again on Wednesday afternoon.
Scott, that is a fantastic segue to get into our next segment talking about Wednesday's game. But first, a word from our friends at SeatGeek. Today's show is sponsored by the folks at SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, so they have you covered for all of your baseball ticketing needs. They have over 28 million downloads, and SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events at SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, theater events, and much more. Baseball season is, of course, in full swing, and you do not want to miss out on any of the action. They have your tickets to SeatGeek to every single game, and of course, that includes Braves stuff, whether they're at home in Atlanta or on the road in other ballparks. I know I've used SeatGeek for a long time for Braves tickets and Falcons tickets and many more things in the past. They have you covered across the board. Plus, they put all the tickets across the web in one place to make sure that you are getting the best possible deal at SeatGeek. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Keep an eye out for the green dots as well as the best values to kind of steer you in the right direction at SeatGeek. And every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swaps. And you know that we are coming through for you guys. You can use our code HAMMER for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That is $20 off your first purchase with promo code HAMMER when you use SeatGeek. Make sure you click on the link in our podcast description to download the SeatGeek app today. One more time, that is promo code HAMMER, $20 off your first purchase with the folks at SeatGeek. Okay, Scott, let's dig into Wednesday's game. I will say this, while a lot of the focus might be on Schwellenbach's second start and he wasn't very, very good, we should at least be fair and begin with the offense or lack thereof. Because, we talked about how the rotation in the 5th starter spot's been a bit of a dire spot at times, and we focused on that quite a bit while you were on your European vacation as well. But look, they didn't score a run on Wednesday. It was the Braves' first regular season shutout loss since May 12th of 2023, so more than a year. They did get shut out in a playoff game more recently than that, but it was 182 games between shutouts, which is the longest streak in franchise history, the 5th longest streak in the history of Major League Baseball between shutouts. And there's been a couple close ones this year, honestly, but they finally got shut out in this game, and that was the reason they lost. Even if pitching was not great, you can't win, Scott. I'm not sure if you knew this. You can't win if you don't score.
It was just lifeless at the plate today. It would probably be the one word I would pick. Lifeless. I mean, just some atrocious at bats. it wasn't even like the Braves had some bad luck. I mean, I guess early on they hit a couple of baseballs well that found a glove, but only one hit and two walks. I mean, just it is very, very bizarre to watch this team go out there and flail away at the plate for what are we on now? 6 weeks where the offense has been bad. I mean, really, it started in my mind during that West Coast road trip to Seattle and then Los Angeles, where they got beat up pretty bad, only won a game that week. I mean, really, since that, the Braves just have not been good offensively. Wednesday was the low point for me. Just very little going on, a bunch of strikeouts. Just it was kind of the perfect storm. And Nick Pivetta, who started for Boston, is not a bad pitcher by any means, but he looked like Cy Young out there. Looked like Pedro Martinez from 20 years ago, just dicing up lineups. There was very little going on, and as has been the case more times than not, whether the pitching is good or not is kind of moot because if the offense is not scoring, it doesn't really matter, right? We know finally on Tuesday the Braves won a game where an opponent scored 3 runs or more. It was the first time in 5 weeks that happened. It's just, yes, Schwellenbach was not very sharp. The bullpen was not very sharp, but you have to score runs at some point. I don't know what else we can say. Braves have to figure out a way to improve their approach and start putting up runs consistently. Because even if they do have a game where they score some runs like they did on Saturday and like they did on Tuesday, they follow it up with just a terrible performance the following day, and they just can't string anything together right now.
Yeah, there have been some signs. You mentioned the two games, two of the last four basically have been good, encouraging offensive games, but this is not a team that it's not breaking news to anybody that can really survive doing that. I mean, I guess they can survive. They can be decent while doing this, but they can't be the juggernaut that we all expected while being this inconsistent at the plate. And all kinds of reasons for it that we've covered in depth. But and hopefully today, to your point, is kind of rock bottom for the offense with one hit and two walks and all that. I wonder what you make of this. It actually came up a little bit. I think it was our friends at Battery Power wrote this up today about the Braves leading all of baseball in doubles right now. And that sounds like a good stat until you realize that they're better off hitting home runs than doubles. And a lot of the home runs they hit in previous years have become doubles this year. For instance, last year when they were so awesome offensively, they led the league in homers, of course, by a huge canyon amount over the number two team. But they were seventh in doubles, which is obviously a lot of doubles too, but they were not number one in doubles. This year, they're number one in doubles and 16th in home runs. And obviously, you're better off hitting more homers than doubles, even if doubles are usually a good sign.
Yeah, it's very weird. If I had the answers to what is plaguing this lineup on a nightly basis, I would like to think that I'd be sitting next to Alex in Atlanta because it's just very bizarre. Even Kevin Seitzer in an interview a couple of weeks ago, he didn't seemingly have a great answer. He just felt like players were pressing and maybe it's just some bad luck with the doubles versus home run thing. Of course, the Braves continue to hit the baseball hard. They're just not having success for it. And I think the maybe level-headed approach is eventually these are going to balance out. The power is going to return. But at the same time, just watching this team day in and day out, I think it's really hard to have a lot of positive vibe because, I mean, let's be honest. I don't know if anybody, when you watch the Braves in the batter's box every night, I mean, are you encouraged by what you're seeing? I'm asking this kind of rhetorically. I mean, I'm not. I think it would be hard, just regardless of, I guess the doubles are a good sign and maybe doubles turn into home runs at some point, but they've been pretty bad in terms of high leverage situation. Braves have not hit very well with runners in scoring position. They haven't been great late in games, which has been a staple of this team the last few years, where even if they aren't ahead in the middle innings, you knew they were going to put together a rally late. It's just been frustrating. And we are more than 2 months into the season now with about 100 or so games left. And who knows, Brad, maybe over the next couple of weeks, they will finally wake up. But yeah, Wednesday, I've been thinking about it. Wednesday was probably the low point of the season for me, just in terms of both offense and pitching.
Listen, Scott, there's a joke to be had in there about the low point probably happening while you were in Europe somewhere. I have to say. I
Uh,
wish I would hope so. But anyway,
Time,
I'm
yeah,
kidding.
that's true. Time your vacations well so you aren't depressed watching poor Ronald. Man, I feel bad for Ronald Acuna.
Yeah,
I
that
have not
that that might have
heard.
been it. That day might have been it, to be honest. But
Yeah, I believe that we're recording this Wednesday evening. I believe that Ronald had surgery yesterday on Tuesday, but I've not seen anything official on that. But Anyway, we're thinking of you, Ronald. I'm sure he tunes into all of our shows. But
Yeah, every
that
show
that was
listener Ronald Acuna Jr. As
yeah.
as we all know. But yeah,
That,
I believe you are right. They never announced that, but they don't have to. They did announce that they were having the surgery on Tuesday, so presumably they did, or we would have heard otherwise. So I think you're right about that. Um, Other things from the game today before we move on to a little bit of a look ahead and some news. Jared Kelly had a little bit of a scare injury wise. There's been plenty of injury stuff, unfortunately, around this team, but he injures his wrist in the sixth inning, comes back in, well, stays, I should say, stays in, then gets pinch hit for, but all is well, it seems. Snicker said he was okay after the game. No, X-rays were negative, so like I think he's okay. Again, we're recording this Wednesday night, so if there's something that changes, we won't know it until tomorrow. But they might have dodged a bullet. That was the phrasing that I think Snit used. And Kelnick isn't like playing like a superstar, but A, he's been pretty good lately, and B, they just don't have a lot of depth behind him.
well, and it really does feel like every single night, or maybe every other night, the Braves have either had an injury or an injury scare. Of course, Tuesday night was Sean Murphy. We don't have to go through the laundry list of injuries the Braves have dealt with during the first 2 months of the year. And anytime you see an outfielder roll his wrist like that, it was pretty concerning. That, of course, is actually how Adam Duvall broke his wrist a couple of years ago, diving for a ball and just kind of rolled over it. So that was concerning, but Kelnick was in good spirits after the game, which is encouraging. He might be a little sore. Maybe he needs a day or two off. Suppose they could go to JP Martinez for a couple of days if needed. But man, the Braves they are almost snake bitten at this point because it seems like every night there's something that's seemingly going wrong, and just have to hope that it's nothing it's not going to linger, because wrist injuries are one of those things that can linger if they aren't treated properly.
That's right, and you can't mess around with wrists and baseball players. That's just a general rule. But fortunately, hopefully they dodged that bullet. We should at least mention Schwellenbach's second start, 6 runs in 4 2/3. The Red Sox are not a great offensive team necessarily. He pitched well at times. The second inning was kind of the first little hiccup. The Rafael Devers home run was actually not a bad pitch. It was out of the zone and not even a bad slider, and Devers just hit the ball to a friendly spot on the monster. Wasn't exactly crushed, but maybe he lost some composure after that. In general, having watched both starts, it seems to me like Schwellenbach is pitching okay, but he's not been able to sustain once it's like second, third time through the order, which is not a huge surprise for a fifth starter that was kind of advanced quickly at this point. But I don't even know if you got the chance to watch the first start, but I know you got to watch today. What have you made of the Schwellenbach experience? And we don't know yet if he's gonna get another turn. Last time it was like very clear that he was gonna stay in the rotation. This time less clear.
Yeah, and the Braves do have an off day on Monday, so they could opt to skip Schwellenbach. I thought he pitched okay on Wednesday. I think the real issue was he just did not have that put away pitch. He was doing a good job of throwing strikes for the most part. He would get up with 2 strikes, but just couldn't put anybody away. You mentioned the home run to Devers was not a bad pitch by any means. Devers is a terrific hitter and just went down and golfed it in a ball that was not a home run in most ballparks, but with Fenway Park being the way it is. But he's been fine. I mean, if the Braves are not going to bring up Hurston Waldrop at this point, I think Schwellenbach is probably the best healthy option for the fifth starter spot. Alan Winans doesn't do much. Dylan Dodd, Darius Vines. I mean, it's a real bummer that AJ Smith-Shawver got hurt during his one start. It's just, man, there's just no great options at this point. Maybe if Hurston Waldrop has another good couple of starts in Gwinnett, maybe he forces the Braves' hands. But if I had to guess, it'll be Schwellenbach again next week, and then they'll kind of evaluate where things are 5 or 6 days from now.
Yeah, it seems like it, although, they might just start rotating, you know what I mean? Like they can keep rotating guys through. I think no one is in love with the options that they have at this point in time. That isn't a huge surprise to say out loud, but I think that's possible that they just, want to see something else. I don't know. We will see. As far as again, there was no indication pro or con after the game, whereas last time it was a little bit more pro than anything else. But worth noting, and yes, while we'll get into this in a second when we look ahead to the coming week, they have a day off, but they have been, as mentioned previously, wanting to be a little bit careful with Ronaldo Lopez in particular and giving him more than 4 days off. So if that holds, that would probably need to have someone else to pitch, but we will see on that front. In fact, We'll get into the latest little bit of news stuff and then also peek ahead to Braves Nationals, the rematch in a moment. But first, a word from our friends Scott Braun and Eric Kratz at Palo Territory on AG1.
Eric Kratz here from FT. I'm a former athlete that really pays attention to his routine. And AG1 every morning before my workouts is something that gets my day going.
Hey, Braun here. AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that delivers daily nutrients and gut health support, and it's backed by multiple research studies so you can trust what you're putting in your body.
Unlike other products which only test their ingredients in isolation, AG1 tests their formula as a whole.
Ready for this stat? 97% of people in a research study felt more energy after 30 days of drinking AG1. If I had to recommend one product to support whole body health, it's AG1, and that's why FT is excited to have them as a new partner. Starting your journey with AG1 is a win. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/foul. That's drinkag1.com/FOUL. Go check it out, FT fam.
Okay, Scott, before we look ahead to the weekend, we both talked around the Sean Murphy elbow injury. He got hit by a pitch late on Tuesday, and it was talked about a lot by Steven and Sean. He had this massive lump, and as they recorded last night, we didn't really know what was going to happen there. By all accounts, the swelling has gone down in a positive direction. Snit's after the game Tuesday that he'd never seen anything like that. I don't know if that was just Snit being a little bit flippant, but Snit's been around for a while. He's not a young man, Scott. He's seen some things in this baseball world.
Yeah, and thank goodness it was nothing serious for Murphy because this guy just can't catch a break. Of course, gets hurt a couple of innings into the season on opening day, misses 2 months. He's trying to come back and get his timing, and then I mean it was only natural to assume the worst when it was like 30 seconds after he got hit by the pitch that his elbow looked like it had a small golf ball on it, and everyone's like, "Oh man, is something broken? Is something burst?" And it sounds like it was just one of those things where his body immediately reacted. And thankfully, Justin Toscano of the AJC was in the clubhouse earlier today before the game and said it was basically unnoticeable, which is a minor miracle for Murphy. So we'll see how quickly he's able to return to the lineup. But quite obviously, good news. The Braves cannot afford to keep losing their regulars like they have this through the first couple of months here of the season. And we know just how good Sean Murphy can be when he's healthy. He just hasn't really been healthy at any point all year long.
Yeah, he played some catch today, reportedly, for the folks that were in Boston. So I was thinking about what they would do if something happened in Darno today. Maybe Murphy could have caught in a pinch. I don't think they would have wanted to have him catch, but if you didn't know this, they can't bring Trump back up unless someone goes on the IL because he was optioned. So they don't really have like the convenient third guy to even bring up at a pinch. Plus, it was an afternoon game after a night game. The timing would have been funny. So they basically went with one catcher today, and that doesn't bite you if it doesn't bite you. But I did wonder aloud to myself, basically, Scott, like, what happens if Travis turns an ankle in the second inning of this game?
Yeah, they probably could have put a couple of like elbow braces on Murph and maybe a couple of batting gear. The things that guys wear in the batting box to protect their elbow, just to prevent a foul ball from ricocheting.
But can he throw? Was the kind of the question I was
Yeah.
I was having. It wasn't like he couldn't physically catch the ball. It was like, can he throw the ball back to the pitcher 100 times?
Yeah,
in the game?
underarm, like little league style, just underarm it. At that point, the game was like 7-0 anyway, so who
That's
cares?
fair.
It probably would have been a funny clip. But yeah, I mean, thank goodness, apparently nothing serious for Murphy.
I was gonna say if I think on Thursday, Friday, if he can't play, they will probably have to figure something out because you don't want to have a 35-year-old Travis d'Arnaud as your only catcher on the entire roster. So hopefully that will be a problem. He's actually available again as of Thursday. This happened yesterday too, but because we haven't went in on it, what do you make of Brian Anderson as a guy who we've kind of seen play in the past? And he was available in June, which means he's not in super high demand, but a guy who was once good with Miami and has, I would say, better bench bat bona fides than a lot of the guys they have on the roster.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. Once upon a time, Brian Anderson, I thought, was a really good ball player with the Marlins, a player who just seemingly beat the Braves in every time those two clubs got together. Of course, 31 years old, was with Seattle and let go. I mean, he is not that player anymore at this point in his career, but I do think Anderson brings a level of production, or at least the potential, off the bench that the Braves didn't really have. Again, it's probably going to be tough for Anderson to see a lot of plate appearances unless there is an injury. Let's hope not. We've had enough of those. But yeah, I mean, for a zero risk signing, a free agent signing to throw on the bench and see maybe there's something there in case you ever do have to call upon Anderson, then I'd probably take him over the few other options the Braves have, kind of bouncing back and forth between Atlanta and Gwinnett.
Yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, would this profile be the guy you would want? Probably not. He's a third baseman, first baseman, maybe a little bit of right field at this point. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but the Braves don't like to give guys rest. So Riley and Olsen, as long as they're healthy, are never sitting, ever. They just don't ever sit. So maybe you would have wanted a different profile. And look, even Snit, they talked about him basically being an infielder. Like he's played right field, but it seems like they would probably go with Martinez if they needed to do that in the outfield before they got to Anderson. So it's really just a pure bench bat, and that's okay. I mean, I have no problem with it. I think he's probably better than a typical guy that you would be able to sign from the scrap heap in June. But this is a not that deep position player group once you get past the injuries and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's funny, maybe not funny, jarring, or just different, I guess, in the universal DH world, just how little benches are called upon in Major League Baseball. It's why I know it's a discussion point about on the 26-man roster, you have to have 13 position players and you have to have 13 pitchers. Now, it's just kind of bizarre that there's this mandate on position players, because I don't know if there's any team that really utilizes its bench a whole lot. At least good teams generally don't, because you just don't need it with the DH. So we'll see what if Anderson ever has a role. It's probably because of an injury, and let's hope not. But again, I mean, I maybe I'm a little higher on him than you are, but once upon a time, even as recent as a couple of years ago, Anderson was a pretty solid big leaguer, and maybe there's something left in the tank if he ever gets a chance.
Yeah, he's not over the hill. He's 31, but you're right. I mean, through that 3-year period, basically from 2018 to 2020, he was a above average starter, which is not a small level to achieve in the baseball world. Since then, not so much, but not a guy without talent. He was pretty good in AAA. Obviously, AAA, you're 31 years old, you should be good, but he was. So there you go. And also this is not even really anything for us to react to, but Matzek's on the 60-day IL now. I think we kind of expected the worst there. They've not really given an update on Matzek, at least that I've seen, but he's on a 60-day and looks like he's nowhere closer to pitching, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a tough go for Tyler Matzek. I'm not sure that he's going to ever really make much of an impact again with the couple of injuries that he's had. And I mean, good on the Braves for paying him and giving him the deserved contract after his heroics in the World Series and that amazing playoff run. But it's not looking good for Tyler. I hope we're wrong. I hope he comes back in a month or two and has a role. But it's going to be tough for him to crack the bullpen, especially if the Braves add an arm or two at the trade deadline. And for now, I imagine Matzek is just going to keep doing rehab work and bullpens, and maybe at some point he goes out on a rehab stint and tries to come all the way back. But it is certainly an uphill climb for Tyler at this point.
Yes, I would agree, even if we are hoping for the best. All right, before we get out of here, a brief look at the weekend. They have a 4-game series against Washington that begins on Thursday. No off day. That's why they had the early game today, so they could travel a bit to Washington. Infamously, I say, the Braves just lost 3 of 4 at home to the Nationals, and the Nationals are not very good. They are 27-34. They're not absolutely horrific, but the Braves shouldn't be losing to them. And by the way, since they left Atlanta, I don't know if you've seen this, they're 1-5 in their last 6. So
Naturally.
yeah, exactly. So on the bright side, and I think really the only note that I even have about this, other than the Braves should win some games here, is that they had their 4 stars that they kind of trust in this matchup. It's Lopez, Sale, Morton, and Fried in that order. Not always you're going to have a 4-game series with your top 4 guys. Washington isn't going to roll over for you, but there is some room here to, I'm not saying sweep, but if you can go out and win the series rather than split it or, God forbid, lose it again, that would be a nice outcome.
Yeah, you need to win 3 games here. And I know it's baseball. It's weird. It's not black and white, but the Braves need to win at least 3 games this weekend in DC. They have their big four going. There's just no excuse not to win some games here. We talked on the weekend show that the Braves need to start beating some of these bad teams if they're going to stay in this all summer and try to come back and overtake the Phillies, who have a 6-game lead at this point in the division. Have to start beating the bad teams. That starts this weekend with the Nationals. 4 games. It's a little weird. We're pretty late into the season to be making our first trip to DC. Let's hope for no rain. I feel like there's a guaranteed rain out every single weekend whenever these two teams get together.
Or a fake rain out.
That's right. Yeah. Legend has it is still not raining in Washington, D.C. But an opportunity for the Braves to win. Ronaldo Lopez is going to get the ball first. He's been so damn good. And then Sale, Morton, and Fried is all you can really ask for when you're lining up. It kind of feels like until the Braves figure out the 5th starter in the rotation, they really need to start winning 3 out of 4 starts from Lopez, Sale, Morton, and Fried, because you just know the 5th starter is not going to give you a great chance until they add somebody. You really do want to start being greedy and try to win 3 out of 4 with your big 4 in the rotation, especially the way that they've all been throwing.
Yeah, the one unfortunate thing is that the Braves do miss Patrick Corbin, who at one point was really good and for a while now has been really bad. And he is Washington's probably worst pitcher. And I believe they're like 3-9 when he pitches this year, and he pitched today. So they don't get to see him, unfortunately. But everything else, pitching wise, kind of leans to Atlanta with those 4 guys on the mound, and hold on tight from there, and then an off day. And then one of the reasons why we're saying that they need to get some wins this weekend is that they have to go to Baltimore after this, and Baltimore, as we'll talk about more on Sunday, is quite good and quite talented. So that's a tough one on the road for sure.
Yeah, the Baltimore Orioles, not that we're going to turn this into a Baltimore Orioles podcast, but the Orioles are like the 2019 Atlanta Braves, where they're just loaded with young position players who are very good. Pitching is pretty solid. I think they need to add. But yes, there are much more difficult games on the horizon for the Braves. They've had a pretty soft stretch of schedule, and they haven't taken advantage in any way. But I mean, they have the Orioles, they have the Yankees, they have the Rays, who are always a tough opponent. I mean, they have some tough games on the horizon, and hopefully they start to figure it out here.
We agree on that. All right, Scott, let's get out of here. A little bit shorter of a midweek podcast today, coming off of the rather desolatory loss on this Wednesday afternoon. Anything to plug at the end of the show? And also, where can folks who might be new to the podcast find all of your musings?
Yeah, Brad, good to do one of these, even if it was not the best of games on Wednesday afternoon in Boston. Thanks, everybody, for checking out the show. We really do appreciate your support. I am at Scott Coleman 55, where you can hear me rambling about God knows what. And we'll be back soon on this feed. I'm actually going to fill in. Our good friend Steven is going to be, I believe, at the games in Washington this weekend. So I'm going to do a show with Sean Coleman, my brother from another mother, tomorrow night on Thursday, and then we'll be back, Brad and I, this weekend. So a lot of good stuff coming, and be sure to stay tuned to the feed.
Yes, please go ahead and check out the podcast. Get ready for that show, and then you and I will do another one on Sunday. But please subscribe and rate and review if you are trying to support the podcast in every possible way. Number one, we appreciate it. Number two, the way to do that is to subscribe and download multiple times. Also support our sponsors, both SeatGeek and AG1. And I really do appreciate that. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Hammer Territory. I am there as well at BT Rowland if you'd like to follow some baseball and probably some basketball along the way as well with my other day job. But anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. I really do appreciate it. You will hear from us later on this week, and we'll see you all next time.